Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the second half of our doubleheader tonight on the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network. My name is Scott Morganroth, Motor City Madmouth. Great show tonight. We're also welcoming a new commentator, and his name is Loud Marlins fan, aka Chase Blake. There you go, Chase. So, welcome to the show, Chase.
Thank you. Glad to be here, and let's have some fun.
We're going to do exactly that. Regulars Jordan Long from Grand Junction, Colorado.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
You're welcome. And last but not least, George Eichhorn.
All right, from the Motor City, we're heating it up, man, tonight.
And Will Vogel, well, welcome, Chase. Welcome again, Will. He pops around a little bit, so it's a guy you're going to get to know with, albeit in the comments section. So, I bring a guy on here from Miami, so I have an obligation to give him a topic so he can get his feet wet just a little bit, smooth landing spot. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the Miami Marlins, youngest starters in franchise history. We just saw one recently. We're going to let you comment on all of them, Chase, and then we'll whip it around and we'll keep moving forward. Yuri Perez went in at 20 years and 27 days. We all know about Jose Fernandez, 20 years, 250 days. Ryan Dempster, 21 years, 29 days. Joe Fontenot, 21 years, 64 days. And Brad Hand, 21 years and 79 days. What's your take on these young pitchers?
Well, it's something for the Marlins, right? We're always switching out the staff, switching out really the whole team every 5-6 years. So it's not new to bring some young guys up. Yuri Perez is actually on the mound right now. Live update for you. Marlins are up 1-0. Jorge Soler blast gave him his first lead ever in the majors. So that's pretty cool for him, Of course, Jose Fernandez, may he rest in peace. I'm not discussing the off the field stuff, but he was a flamethrower and really was one of the best pitchers ever in baseball if he had a full career, but at least on the Marlins. You look at Ryan Dempster's career, left us, went to the Cubs, had a good career out there in a trade after a couple years. I'm not too familiar with Joe Fontenot, but Brad Hand is still in the majors. I believe he's a bullpen guy now, but he's still out there too.
Okay, any comments there, Jordan, on these guys?
I think it's interesting because, I remember Ryan Dempster obviously playing for the Cubs. I didn't realize he started with the Marlins at that young of age. And then obviously Jose Fernandez, great pitcher. But the thing is you look at 20-year-olds, you have to get their feet wet somehow. And it's just interesting that it's that young to get them called up to the majors. I didn't realize they were all that young when they were called up to the Marlins.
George?
Yeah, it is rather interesting. When you look at the situation in Detroit, it's been very hit and miss. Former general manager Al Avila, of course, had a penchant for drafting young arms. And we have, in Detroit, we've suffered. And I know that it doesn't always work out. That's why you try to stock your team with as many young arms as you can get through the draft or through trades. But that was quite a stat there that you presented to us, Scott. All those young arms, and especially Fernandez. I really think that a situation happens where these kids get there. They're throwing so fast and so hard so early that I think a lot of this is brought upon by baseball executives and baseball coaches themselves, because there's a lot of pressure on these kids because, let's face it, most teams are starved for good pitching, and you can't have enough young arms is I guess what I'm saying, and it sure proves out by that list from the Marlins.
Yeah, I'll add one thing to it. I know that this group is unbelievable as young as they come, and the Marlins have a great track record for drafting pitchers. I know Sandy Alcantara came in a trade, but when you look at Max Meyer and then Sixto Sanchez down the line, you wonder what they're going to turn out to be like when it's all said and done. So kudos to the way they develop pitchers. Now the question is, can they keep them healthy? Before we go on to our next topic, I do want to point out that The audio version of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. Please hit the red subscribe button on YouTube, South Florida Tribune. We're striving for 1,000 subscribers. Please also comment, like, and share the broadcast. Want to be a guest? No problem. Send topic ideas to South Florida Tribune at gmail.com, or you can participate in the chat room or contact me over at Tribune South. I'll be more than happy to find a way to get you on that way. And if you want to advertise cost efficiently, call me at 954-304-4941. We are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. And again, my Twitter handle is at Tribune South, and our website is www.southfloridatribune.com. All right, you know what I'm going to do before we go on to our next topic? George, there's a lot here from Will Vogel, but go ahead.
Will says, I love how Perez got called up by Alcantara, a video calling him. Fernandez, I think, could have been amazing if he lasted longer, and Hand is journeyman, and Dempster made his name mainly known in Chicago.
All right, so with that said, we'll talk about a Residence Marlins guy here, Chase. Why don't you go ahead and comment on Will Vogel's opinions?
Totally agree. You know, Sandy didn't have to do that. He actually picked him up from the airport too the next day, the next morning. That video is on Marlins.com and also on their Twitter. It's pretty unique for a Cy Young winner coming off his Cy Young to reach out to a young man.
Yeah, it really is. But that's the type of person Sandy Alcantara is.
Yeah, he sure is.
Yeah, you with us, Chase? Well, as we continue to move along here, okay, you know, Jordan, what's your comment on what Will had to say? All right, he's back. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was talking to myself there. All right, so back to Sandy Alcantara. He picked him up from the airport the next day, which a Cy Young winner doesn't have to do. It's pretty awesome, pretty unique for him to do that. Jose Fernandez, you know, his career cut short, but he was going to be one of the best in baseball. Would have loved to see what he could have done. Brad Hand, yes, is a journeyman. And as far as Ryan Dempster, you know, he was well known down here before that Chicago trade. So he's a good guy, was very known in the South Florida nonprofit area and brought that over there. So on the field, off the field, all great guys.
Okay. All right, let's move on to a payroll topic, okay? The 4 highest payrolls in MLB, I'll tell you what they produce record-wise. When I looked it up today, the New York Mets are 25-23. The New York Yankees are 29-20. The San Diego Padres are 21-26. And the Philadelphia Phillies are 22-25. Okay, you know, I'm going to start with Jordan on this one. Give me your take on each and every one of these.
You know, it's not really surprising that the New York Yankees and the New York Mets are doing so well because of how much money they, you know, put into their team. The Padres, on the other hand, I mean, they're in my division in the National League West. I thought they were going to be a whole lot better. They're just not playing up to par, which is surprising. I mean, they have so much talent with Fernando Tatis Jr., and all that other talent. Their pitching just isn't there, and they've had a lot of injuries. As for the Phillies, I mean, they've been up and down, but it's just interesting that if you spend a lot of money, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win.
George?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, it's still, some people think it's early. Some people don't think it's early in the season. I know if you're a fan of one of those teams, you don't think it's early to press the panic button, but it is kind of early to press it. But it is ironic, all that money being dished out by those clubs. You know, our friend Dave Dombrowski is in Philadelphia, and of course Harper missed part of it, a good part of the chunk of that schedule so far. He's back. And then San Diego, yeah, I mean, you know, here's a situation where they're obviously trying to buy. You know, the owner's spending a whole lot of money to try to bring that team together. Mets, you know, JV, Justin was a late starter. Scherzer got the suspension. So they've had some issues over in New York. And the Yankees, well, they obviously have had some injuries too, as they always do. But I think that those 4 teams will contend in each one of their respective divisions before too long. the American League East obviously is very, very difficult, very good division this year, especially.
Okay, Chase.
Yeah, I think the Mets are the biggest surprise. You know, they spent so much money this offseason. For them to come out slow with the injuries, with all the money being spent, it's just crazy there. The Yankees, you know, their whole roster has been injured all season. They have an excuse, and they're starting to come up. You know, they're starting to get their wins. I think they just came off a decent, or are on a decent road trip right now. San Diego Padres, definitely the most yeah, exciting team on paper, I want to say, as far as youth is concerned. You know, you have a lot of younger talent as opposed to the Mets with older talent. Juan Soto, Tatis, Manny Machado. You expect those bats to light up in the middle of that lineup. It just hasn't happened yet. Philadelphia Phillies, they're a surprise, kind of coming off last year, the National League pennant, coming into this season, but they didn't really work on their pitching, right? That was their biggest issue last year. They brought in Trey Turner and spent a little bit money on bats, but their pitching is their downfall. They lost Eflin, and Suarez has been injured. He just came off the IL. So really, all these teams are going to be in it. It's the teams that we're going to discuss on your next topic that is going to hinder on that.
Well, you do great segues. No wonder I got to give this guy this stuff ahead of time. He's probably going to take over my chair one of these days. If you do, more power to you, Chase. It's no problem. Yeah, I'll go ahead and talk about Bryce Harper will be fine. And the San Diego Padres, I got to give them a whole lot of credit. They try every year. They're not afraid to spend money. It just so happens sometimes it doesn't work out, or they're a victim of bad luck. So I won't take it any further there, because you know what? But I will. All right, Chase, you know what? Why don't you read this next one of Will Vogel? Go ahead, and everybody can talk about it.
All right. Mets have Steve Cohen and uses money. Yankees spend a lot. Padres and Phillies have been spending money recently.
Okay. And then you want to add to that?
All true. I mean, Steve Cohen is playing with monopoly money right now. Is the way he's changing the game. Yankees have spent over, I think it was $2 billion in the last 20 years. I did the math prior to the season, and they have one World Series to show for it. Padres, you know, they've made a lot of trades. They've traded their youth away. The Marlins, I know, big fan here. They have Xavier Edwards now, who was a big piece to the Tampa Bay and the Blake Snell trade. And now Phillies are spending money, but baseball is so tough, right? It has to be perfect. It's a puzzle, and any little chip off a piece, you're not going to get where you're going to go or need to go.
All right, we're going to remain in the chat room, okay? Now we got Bo, so George, you can read his comments.
Football talk, thank you. Hopefully the M's can get it together. You can't win a division in April and May, but you can lose it.
True, but the only thing is, as long as they're playing competitive baseball and you're hanging around and you're not too far back, Bo, then at least you're in the discussion. I've seen so many teams out of it within the first month, but it doesn't look like the Mariners are there. So you know what? We're going to do exactly what Chase said I was going to do, is segue to the next thing, the 4 lowest payrolls in MLB. Pittsburgh, 25 up, 22 down. Surprise? No. Okay, they're always not spending any money. The Tampa Bay Rays, well, you talk about an organization here that makes so much out of what little they have, and they spend it wisely. More power to them. 35-14. The Baltimore Orioles, 31-16. And the Oakland A's, well, 10-39. Don't know where they're going to play. They may be the closest thing to homeless without being homeless. And I don't know. I used to like to watch soap operas, but this one in Oakland has been going on a lot longer than a lot of the ones that are out there. So, all right, Chase, let's talk about the 4 lowest ones.
All right, let's start with Pittsburgh. They've made some moves, made some trades over the last couple seasons. You know, last year they were not a good baseball team. They were able to sign Brian Reynolds to an extension. They didn't trade that one piece that they had, and they're really building around him. So for them to be over 500 in that division with St. Louis playing as bad as they are, the Cubs made some moves last offseason. Milwaukee is first place now. They have some injuries and have issues, but for Pittsburgh to stay up there right now, a month and a half in, kudos to them. If you go to Tampa Bay, they're the best baseball franchise in the league. They flat out, they draft right. They spend right. They bring up their own players for the most part before they become too expensive. So they started off 12-0 this year, almost setting a record.
I think it was 13-0. Chase,
13-0.
Yeah.
13-0 this year. They set a record for themselves. That's just great for them. Hopefully they get their stadium. I think the best feel-good story out of all four teams, however, is Baltimore. You like to see the Orioles. They were a big name in the 80s, the 90s. They've really fell off a cliff as far as being ever in it. So I'm happy for them to be at 31-16, and they have all these. The guys are young. Their pitching's young. They're a youthful team, and we just hope they continue. Oakland's the saddest part, right? They're trading all their players away, and they're really not getting much back for them. If you actually look at the trades, the prospects that they've gotten for the players like Matt Olson to the Braves, and then the catcher to the Braves, they really didn't get what they could have back. They just did a fire sale, and they may be moving to. I think it's finalized. You never know until it happens, but going to Las Vegas. So that's my opinion on all four. Hopefully, youth continues to build and play in Baltimore and in Pittsburgh.
All right, George.
Well, they're all interesting cases. I mean, Pittsburgh, really got off to a great start, and they've kind of leveled off recently a little bit, but they have a bright future there, no question about it. That's a very proud franchise that's really been very poor the last, many years going back. Tampa Bay, unbelievable, of course. We've talked about them before. By the way, they're getting shellacked by Toronto tonight, but that's abnormality. They've been playing so well. You're right about them being a model franchise, but they're not a model franchise at the gate because the Bay Area still has not accepted them as they should have been accepted with a great, outstanding team. It's one of the biggest, most ridiculous things I know is that, and we've talked about this before on this show, as you guys know, but that's very sad that that part of Florida has not supported that team better. But that being said, they do have a great lineup and a great manager in Cash. Baltimore, I'm very happy about them. Baltimore used to be Detroit's biggest rivalry back in the 1960s and early 70s. And what a great franchise they were with Jim Palmer, Dave McNally, Earl Weaver was the manager. I mean, just tremendous history in Baltimore. And for a long time, when Washington was out of the league, they were the nation's capital team, the Baltimore Orioles. So people forget about that. When Washington moved to Texas to become the Rangers, Baltimore inherited the label of America's national team, if you will, in the capital area. But that being said, Baltimore's got a bright future, no question about it. Oakland, very sad. I mean, the fire sale and the stadium stuff going on and nobody showing up for the games. It's no surprising that they have such a low payroll, and they're very much paying the price right now.
Yeah, one word to describe that: embarrassing. All right, Jordan.
I have to say, I mean, you look at Oakland as the least amount of money spent. It's not a surprise, like you guys all said. They're moving. It's basically a dumpster fire there. Baltimore, I am surprised that they don't spend a lot, but they were good last year. Again, their future is bright. Pittsburgh, they started out pretty hot. Now they're coming down to earth. But again, they have a lot of prospects that are there. They're going to be good in the future. Tampa Bay, though, I know they are a franchise that doesn't spend a lot, but they always seem to do well, even if Tampa Bay isn't really supporting that team. They're always in the thick of it in that American League East race.
I mean, the only thing I'll say about Tampa, okay, and we'll just go to Will Vogel's comments because he's going to. And you know what? I'll read them this time. Pirates are shocking people. Well, we'll see how long. Well, but okay. For now, they are. Rays are so analytical with Kevin Cash. And prior to that, Joe Madden was a heck of a manager, too, before he went out to lead the Cubs to their only title and always contending. And we know about Oakland had the other issues with attendance. Baltimore is contending again with youth. We get that. But here's the reality of the situation. And being a former Tampa resident and University of South Florida graduate, that stadium should have been built in Hillsborough County, right next door to the Buccaneers. Period. I don't want to get into this jargon, that Tampa's a bad sports town. Let me tell you, you put any major sports team in Hillsborough County, and they will support it. Okay, the Lightning are doing well. The Buccaneers are doing well. Even their minor league teams aren't doing bad. Put the Rays in Hillsborough County and leave it alone. Period. I live there. I'd like to think I know a little bit something, right? My brother Lonnie would always say, one of your many hometowns. So yeah, he's right. My little kid brother, one of your many hometowns. I was just there recently. But the reality is, put the Rays back in Hillsborough County. They'll draw. You can put 30,000 people in. The Tropicana Field is just in a bad area. And to me, if you've ever been on the Howard Franklin Bridge during rush hour, you'd think you'd be pulling your hair out if you have any. And if you don't, you'll have black and blue marks hitting your head with the palm of your hand. It's bad. I'm telling you. It took me a long time to go from my alma mater to my attorney's office in Clearwater, almost 2.5 hours on 275, only to find out that my attorney didn't even show up. And then it took me a while to get back to South Florida. Put the Rays in Hillsborough County. And the story. Now, Pittsburgh, like I mentioned, feel good story for 50 games. Come down to earth, right? Okay. Tampa Bay, to me, run masterfully. They really are. You know, they win with a lot. And again, as I alluded to, Joe Madden, now Kevin Cash is the best manager in baseball, hands down. And Baltimore, they are a good feel-good story. Traditions there with Jim Palmer, Earl Weaver, and the rest. And last on this list, well, we know Oakland's bad. And right now they're better off moving to Vegas. Now, if they can do it and move into the AAA ballpark, you can't do any worse. And you might feel like there's a semblance of a crowd there. But you know what? We'll see how Rob Manfred deals with it. All right. On to some pretty good news for a change. I know we're talking about the potential funeral of 4 teams and a little bit of the underachieving, but let's get away from that business. I don't know about you, Chris Mad Dog Russo's a guy, I value his opinion a lot. And his active players headed to Cooperstown include Miguel Cabrera, Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, Clayton Kershaw, Freddie Freeman, Mike Trout, Bryce Harper, Mookie Betts. Chase, any debate about any of them, all of them, or none of them?
No huge debate here. Miguel Cabrera is a shoo-in. If he's not unanimously voted in, then there's something wrong with the voters. Justin Verlander, yeah, he's been great his career. Max Scherzer has been great. Clayton Kershaw, Freddie Freeman, Mike Trout, Bryce Harper, Mookie Betts. Well, by name, as of right now, they're in, but who knows how votes will go in 5 to 10 years when their vote actually comes up, maybe even longer, right? We may be looking at 15 years. So we'll see how the rest of their career trends and if any of them other than who has a World Series out of that group. You got Mookie Betts has a World Series. Freddie Freeman has one. Kershaw, Scherzer, Verlander, and Cabrera. So really Bryce Harper needs to get his and Mike Trout needs to lead his team.
Good points. I'll tell you, what do you think of this guy here? You guys want him back on a future show?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Guess what, Chase? You're doing awfully good. You're off to an incredible start. We even have a little bit more to go. All right, Jordan, some assessment on this list.
I think, honestly, obviously, the shoo-ins are Clayton Kershaw, Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander, Mookie Betts. The only one that I have a question mark is Bryce Harper. That's just because of his off-field antics, and he's gotten a few suspensions. The problem with the Baseball Hall of Fame is it's supposed to be the best players, but what we have seen is for good players. I mean, they've left out a whole lot. I hope most of these players do get in. It's just a matter of will the voters vote them in? And honestly, who knows what's going to happen in 10 to 15 years.
True. Well, Miguel Cabrera, I know it's the first ballot. I want to believe that, but you're right. All right, George.
Well, yeah, Miguel, of course, here in Detroit, and he won the championship with the Marlins, not in Detroit, but he'll make it. All of these are outstanding candidates. I'm with you, Jordan. I think Harper would be one of them that I would wonder about. Trout, I sure hope he gets to play on a winning, a World Series team. The Angels have been just fluttering, and I hope he gets his dream come true. And any of those guys that are on the list here, it's a great list. Of course, Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer spent time in Detroit and did a terrific job leading the Tigers into 2 World Series, even though they lost both of them. But no, it bodes very, very well for the Baseball Hall of Fame. I think these guys are class acts, almost all of them, everything they do. There are some exceptions, but as you stated earlier, hey, you never know what's going through the mind of the writing block. Anything could happen. Things could change. We don't know. But on the field, performance-wise, these guys are super. Every one of them.
All right, now I got a very interesting topic. Okay. Manny Machado becomes minority owner of San Diego MLS expansion team. Yeah, I know. All right, Jordan.
That's the first I've ever heard it. But honestly, a lot of these
I'm
guys
going to always give you a first every once in a while.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is if for these players, like I know Tom Brady's going to be part owner of, or minority owner of the Raiders, but the thing is, if you look at it, they're trying to figure out what they should do after they retire. And I think for Machado, this is great. You're part owner, or you're going to be a minority owner of an expansion MLS team. I mean, that's great. Now you have something to look forward to once you retire from the game of baseball. Most of these players need to have that. They need to have a plan for what they're going to do once they retire.
George?
Well, yeah, I'm sure Manny probably loves soccer, obviously, as many people do, especially people from other parts of the world. I mean, we're getting closer to more U.S. Americans adopting to the sport. MLS is just expanding like crazy. But unfortunately, we don't have a team in Detroit yet. But no, I think it's great for him to be involved. I mean, it's a great investment he's making, and I know he loves the sport, as I'm sure so many people do, from his native land. There's just a lot of excitement, I'm sure, especially when you get a new team like that, an expansion team, and it's a great city, San Diego. So I mean, he's making an investment as a person and as a sports fan, as well as from a standpoint of being a ball player.
All right, Chase, give me your opinion on this.
I mean, you just used the one word, George, and that's investment. Manny Machado's just signed another ginormous contract where he has so much money, and they need something to do with it. It shows he's going to be in San Diego for the next, I think, 11 years. So he's showing he's going to build his name in that city, and I hope they win, for his sake. But when it comes to these players being minority owners of any sports franchise, they're really not that much involved. They're just a name and money. So I hope they make well on their investment.
Yeah, I'll say to Manny Machado, more power to him, really. I mean, you know what? San Diego's had a lot of bad luck losing franchise, lose the Chargers, but I think that was the city's own doing. They should have built a Chargers stadium, and they did get the Padres one. And I won't mention the fact that the Clippers originated. Well, they were there prior to that, Buffalo Braves, and I don't know what their hockey background is, so I'm not going to go into that. But yeah, more power to Manny. Okay, one last topic I want to get to tonight, and that's this. It's really hard to avoid it. Glenn Kuiper won't return as A's broadcaster after using a racial slur. He said, "I wish the Oakland A's would have taken into consideration my 20-year career, solid reputation, integrity, and character." Well, let me tell you something, Mr. Kuiper. It doesn't work that way in baseball, and I'll tell you why. Tom Brenneman made a big mistake by using a comment that with a hot mic. Al Campanis, I don't know if any of you guys ever remember it or have heard of it, and I got to know him well at the 1981 baseball winter meetings. His 41-year career with the Dodgers came to an end after an interview with ABC News Nightline Ted Koppel. So, Glenn, I'm going to tell you, my friend, anytime you do anything along those lines, to me, it's career suicide. You cannot do it. And I can tell you right now, the one that hits closer to me, though, Chase, Jordan, and George, is Campanis. Because I got to know this guy, and he seemed like a real good guy. And he did a lot of good things with the Dodgers for 4 decades. But, man, when you start to get – and Ted Koppel during that interview was doing everything he could. You don't mean this. He was trying to bail him out and save himself from – Campanis. No, I really do. Boom, next day he's done. So, sorry, Glenn, you're not getting any slack. 20 years is great, but 41 years by Campanis to me is a lightning rod. Okay, Jordan, Glenn Kuiper. Well, I guess he's the only one not going to Vegas. So,
I actually saw the story. I didn't know what he said, and then I heard the audio, and it's obviously what he said. I know he didn't mean to say it, but the fact of the matter is, you said a word you can't say on air. There's a lot of times, I mean, I've learned as a broadcaster, even in my college years, where you have to pretend the mic is on and you can't say stuff you're not supposed to. A lot of those announcers did. For Glenn, though, I mean, that's just a racist slur. He shouldn't have said it. I knew he was trying to say something else, but the fact of the matter is, you said it. I don't feel sorry for you. You had 20 years. That's a great run. The fact of the matter is you said a word you couldn't say.
Okay, well, you know what, George? I'm going to let you read Will's. I want you to comment on this subject first. Go to Will's because we know all too about this. Chase, you're going to have the last word on the subject. Go ahead.
Yeah, you want my comment first, Scott?
Yeah, please do, and then you can
Okay.
talk about.
Well, it's very unfortunate. I mean, Kuiper's had a great career, but we've seen it happen time and time again, like you said, Scott. It's unfortunate, and again, he says it was a slip of the tongue. He didn't mean it, and this cancel culture that still exists in America, and it's just you're not going to get any breaks on this one, unfortunately. I'm not saying that he deserves to keep his job, but I'm saying it doesn't happen like it probably should, where there's some sort of redemption period after a certain long suspension or something like that. When you say something as nasty as that, it just doesn't happen in America, and it shouldn't. So, Will Vogel, yeah, and I thought about this one too, Will, that you put up here. It's no excuse to use a racial slur. Jack Morris, former Tiger pitcher, broadcaster, used an Asian accent against Ohtani, and he had to do an apology after a TV commercial. And then this past offseason, if you guys don't know this, he was released by the Tigers and Bally Sports. They said, they're moving on.
Okay. All right, Chase.
In this world, in this day and age with social media, that thing was probably viewed 10 million times. You can't do it. And I see both sides, right? Playing devil's advocate. It was a flub, and flubs happen, but you can't flub that word. And if you've been doing this for 20 years, you cannot flub that word in other words. And that word's hurtful. You hurt people. You hurt viewers of that game. And NBC Sports California has no choice because they have a viewership that watches that game, that word and other words like that can hurt. It stinks. You shouldn't have said it. Game over. Bye.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things you do, and getting racial, I don't care whether you're talking about this particular thing or other things that could get you into trouble. Don't do it, because the repercussions and the reputation that are going to get are just so high. You don't want to risk any of that. And unfortunately, I've listed a few examples of individuals that had good reputations, but one mistake that you make can ruin it all. It really is. So let me go out there and mention our information again, just so you understand. This is 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. My name is Scott Morganroth, Motor City Madmouth. Please be joined by Jordan Long, George Eichhorn, and Chase Blake, the newest member of our broadcast team. Chase done a really super job. Had an opportunity to meet this guy on Twitter, and I got news for you. After this show, when I get to a Marlins game, I'm going to let the Marlins PR staff know that I found me a good kid on Twitter who's going to be a commentator, and they're going to know a little bit more about you more when I get down there, Chase. Good first act. So let me go over it again. So the audio version of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. So please hit the red subscribe button on YouTube's South Florida Tribune. We're striving for 1,000 subscribers. Please also comment, like, and share the broadcast. Want to be a guest? Well, do what Will Vogel does. Participate in the chat room. I brought people on from the chat room, or you can send your topic ideas to South Florida Tribune at gmail.com. If you want to advertise cost efficiently, call me 954-304-4941. We are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. If you want to contact me on Twitter, it's at Tribune South. Also go to our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. Kudos to Candy Ebling for everything she does on the website, because she is a master when it comes to it all. With that said, this is a part of the program as we wrap it up. Okay, Jordan, why don't you let everybody know how they can get a hold of you?
You can find me on Twitter at SportsScoop1. I have a blog that I write Mondays through Thursdays with podcasts on Fridays at sports-scoop.com. Besides being here on 108 Stitches, I am on Pundit's Pundit on the Sideline Sports Network on Wednesdays, as well as many other shows on the Sideline Sports Network.
Okay, and I have the good fortune of working with Jordan Line on Pundits. Pundits a great show, and of course I'm very delighted to have Jordan on. He knows his stuff, and I'm really proud of what he brings. Let alone the fact that that group of Sideline Sports are all a great group to work with. Chase, as long as you hang around, I'll introduce you to more and more people in our system, and you'll be able to make bigger contacts as well. So Chase, why don't you let everybody know how they can get a hold of you?
All right. Once again, thanks for having me. I look forward
You're
to joining the network and really having a larger presence here on 108 Stitches. You can find me at Loud Marlins Fan. That, as you see here, at Loud Marlins Fan on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. I look forward to interacting with everyone and anyone. I also do have a podcast that I record once or twice a month. It is the Loud Marlins Fan podcast, located on all major podcasting platforms. And thanks for having me. My hashtag is Let's Get Louder, so I look forward to doing that with you guys.
Well, you kept it even keeled today, and you were great. So, all right. Last but not least, my longtime colleague, George Eichhorn. You're an author. Chase needs to know that.
I do. I write a book called Detroit Sports Broadcasters. I always forget what side I'm on here, on the air. And Scott's in the book as well, Chase. It's a compilation of, I don't know, 80 years, maybe. Could be 100 years of broadcasting in Detroit. We've had a rich tradition of broadcasters, greats like Ernie Harwell and Van Patrick and Bruce Martin and Bud Lynch and all kinds of great names. It would take me forever to name them all. And Scott's in the book. We've had an association together, a friendship of 43 years, and working here in Detroit and other cities. And he's interviewing Muhammad Ali and Jimmy Connors. There's a link to buy the book if you're interested. At the end of my column, I write for the South Florida Tribune under the Motor City Tribune banner. I'm a longtime Detroit area sports writer and broadcaster. You can reach me at gicorn@yahoo.com, and you can also reach me at SandGSports99. I'm on the Sports Exchange. I'm an occasional guest on other shows, and this one, of course, I love this one, the baseball show, 108 Stitches, and having a great time with you guys tonight too as well. Thanks.
Yeah, what's good is when George and I can do this show, you get an opportunity to connect the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s. And as we bring a lot of you younger guys along, I think there's a great balance. The one guy that's not here tonight, Eric Katz, also does a nice job on here. And we work diligently to get guests, as you're going to find out in upcoming broadcast, Chase. Don't be afraid to meet some guys that play the game, and you will as time goes on. So, I always love the show. Of course, I enjoy everyone that we have on the network. But baseball is a sport that I covered for over 40 years. I played it. I was a catcher for 6 years, so I can get a feel for what people do behind the plate. But I love the young talent we develop here on this network. And tonight is evidence with Jordan and Chase. Eric Katz is another one of those, and there'll be others. So, but meanwhile, great job by my crew tonight. Welcome out to the team, Chase. You were absolutely fantastic, and we're looking forward to having you on a lot more shows. If you want to be on here, you certainly convinced a lot of us you deserve to be here. So
I'm a sponge to you guys. I appreciate you bringing me on and learning from you. So thank you.
Well, no problem. Any way we can help you, you know how to reach out to us. So with that said, this concludes this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. So on behalf of Jordan Long, Chase Blake, the Loud Marlins Fan, and George Eichhorn, my name is Scott Morgan, Route to Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you next week on this particular show. Good night, everybody.
Well, thank you.